Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin's holding steady around 110K, which feels fitting because even the market's in costume today. Now, just 17 years ago on Halloween night, Satoshi dropped the Bitcoin Whitepaper, a cryptographic trick that turned into a $2 trillion treat. So for this special Halloween episode of the Blockchain Report, we're summoning a killer panel. We'll have Rajat Soni, Morgen Rochard, Susie Ward, and a few other surprise creatures of the night to talk Satoshi's vision and whether Bitcoin's price will rise from the dead before year's end. All that and more right now on today's special spooky episode. Let's go! Good morning, my crypto creatures of the night, and welcome back to another episode of the Blockchain Report. I'm Hank Hudson, haunting you live from San Francisco, California, where the fog is thick, the costumes are questionable, and the markets look like they've been raised from the dead. It's Friday, the day your portfolio crawls out of its coffin and checks the charts and then goes right back in. And we're excited to have you for our special Halloween white paper episode. So if you recall, 17 years ago today on a Halloween night, just like this, a mysterious figure named Satoshi Nakamoto dropped a 9-page PDF onto the internet. There was no hype video, no VC round, no token presale, just a white paper called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And that little Halloween trick, as you might know, turned into a $2.5 trillion treat. And this morning we're celebrating Bitcoin's White Paper Day, and joining me for this very special, very spooky edition of the Blockchain Report are some absolute killers, metaphorically, in the Bitcoin world. So joining us today, first off, we have Susie Ward, CEO and co-founder of Bitcoin Policy UK, and Morgen Rochard, founder of Origin Wealth Advisors. Ladies, welcome to the show. And are you ready to light some orange candles and summon some economic spirits or what?
Yes, can't wait. Let's do it.
First, how are we doing today, ladies? I want to start with you, Susie. How is your Halloween and White Paper Day treating you this October 31st?
Can I just say something really boring and just say I've been very busy and just trying to tick things off my list. I haven't really paid attention to the fact that it's White Paper Day, but I'm really looking forward to going out this evening because I've got a white paper party lined up in London. So I'll make up for it then. But today I've just been super busy.
Oh, I hear that. And Morgan, I know you've got some Halloween plans with the kiddos this morning. Is everything well in your world on this spooky Friday?
Yeah, thank God. My kids are really looking forward to trick-or-treating this afternoon. And yeah, we've got our little orange bowl of candy ready for people to come by. So should be good.
All right, Halloween is officially here then. Amazing, ladies. Well, let's jump on into it because 17 years ago to the day, the world was melting down, banks were collapsing, governments were panicking, and one anonymous coder decided to change all of that and write a manifesto for financial independence. So my first question to start the day here, ladies, and I want to start with you, Susie. Do you think that it's a coincidence that Satoshi dropped the white paper on Halloween, or was that some kind of deliberate symbolism? Maybe a rebellion in disguise? What do you think?
I think there's a lot of things that he did that feel like they're little coded messages. So I'd say that there's every possibility that it was intended to be dropped on this day. Absolutely.
Yeah, what about you, Morgan? Was this just a spooky coincidence, or did Satoshi have a bigger idea here in mind, dropping things on Halloween?
Well, I wonder, because it did coincide with markets really having trouble in October of 2008. And given that, I wonder if markets had trouble, let's say in May of 2008, maybe the white paper would have come out on a different day. But I do think that given that it did happen in October, that why not put it out on Halloween, right? Maybe Susie can write a nice article with all the commentary about the symbolism and different things that have happened behind the scenes.
I would love to do that. That's exactly the kind of thing that I'd really get into. Like, I just need to tick more things off my list. But yeah,
there you go. Just adding things on for you, you know.
Yeah, no, we're waiting for that one. You only got 12 hours left or something on your side of the pond, Susie. So you only got so much time before it becomes dated, and you have to wait till next year. So we'll keep our eyes.
Yes, yeah, you're right. I'll start planning it now because luckily that's something that won't change.
That's true. I plan on
Actually, no, that's a brilliant idea. I could literally write it now for next year, couldn't I?
Yeah, you could, it's kind of like when people buy discount Christmas gifts, like in January, like the decoration. Ready
It's
to
much
go.
worse though when they buy the Halloween candy on November 1st and then they give it out the following year.
Yeah, I'm
Does
guilty
that
of
happen
that.
a lot?
I'm giving it out. So I understand how that works for sure. Now, ladies, we're 17 years past the first viewership of the white paper, and if Satoshi were haunting our conversation today, what do you think he'd say about where we're at right now? Bitcoin's at plus 100,000. Would he be a proud parent, a horrified scientist, or is he just sipping matcha in silence in the corner? How do you think Satoshi would feel seeing his vision 17 years later? Morgan, let's start with you.
I mean, I would imagine that he would feel proud of where it went. I wonder if maybe he wouldn't have known how quickly or how, well, I guess, I don't know, 17 years is quick, but in my mind it is, right? Financial systems are generally, series long experiments. And so 17 years to me seems quite short. And I would imagine that that if he were looking at it, that he would think the same way. I wonder also, just given like the cypherpunkness of how it started, if he would feel like it had become very institutionalized, and maybe not exactly what he intended. But I, again, don't know. I'm not in his head and I have no idea. But also, I imagine that if we do want this to be a global reserve currency, which is also what I imagine he intended it to be, that that of course large players have to get involved in order to make that happen. So it's kind of hard, I think, in the Bitcoin world to balance this grassroots movement that we kind of all love and want to follow, with the fact that in order for it to become what we all use day to day, unit of account, medium of exchange, and store of value, that it actually does have to permeate all parts of the system.
That's a good point. And what do you think, Susie? I mean, is this fulfilling the vision as Satoshi had it? Do we maybe get lost a little on the way and we're kind of veering from what his initial idea was? In your opinion, how do you think it's going from Satoshi's perspective?
Well, there's a little part of me that thinks that how was Satoshi. And so sometimes when I think about Satoshi, I think about what how actually said about Bitcoin. And I know they're not technically the same things, but sometimes they cross over in my head and become the same things. And how did predict that we would have this institutionalization of Bitcoin? And I think I can't remember exactly what he said about it, but it is something that he predicted. And he also said that every single day that it keeps going, it just keeps getting stronger and stronger, and it's more likely to survive. And I think that if he could see that it had lasted this long and weathered all of these storms, because really the anti-fragility of Bitcoin has really come into its own in the past 17 years. It's weathered so many storms and it's going to weather so many more. And the next one is obviously the Wall Street attack phase, and the institutionalization of Bitcoin, because I do actually think it's unfortunately been a little bit co-opted by certain cohorts. But I think that it has to survive that. If it doesn't survive, then, we can all move on to something else and stop being obsessed over Bitcoin.
Never. I will never stop being obsessed over Bitcoin.
You will if it fails. You have to. The thing is if the information changes, then you do kind of have to change your mind. So I do think to myself all the time, as much as I live and breathe it, and I love Bitcoin, like of course I do. We all do. If something changes that changes my mind about it, one day I might not love Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's important to stay flexible and have an open mind to new information as it comes out. And it's interesting you mentioned how, because I saw something really crazy. It was just yesterday that if you take the name Satoshi Nakamoto and you translate it to the Japanese characters, the Japanese characters themselves actually appear to spell out Hal Finney or Finney, whichever one it is, like if you actually look at how they're shaped. So I'm like, I don't know if that's just a coincidence or a really clever Easter egg in there, but it's worth checking out. It was a little spooky. I saw it yesterday. Had no idea. And speaking of spooky, ladies, I want to switch things up a little. I know these panels, we just talk and talk and talk, but I want to play a game. Will you play this game with me?
Yes.
All right, here's the game. It is Halloween after all. So the game is called Trick or Treat. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to throw out a statement, and I want each of you to tell me whether it's a trick, it goes against Satoshi's vision for Bitcoin, or is it a treat and it's actually good for Bitcoin going forward? And then just give me a little explanation on your reasoning. Sound good?
Oh, everything's good for Bitcoin, isn't it? Oh, go on, do it. Yeah.
All right, Susie. So we're starting with you. Bitcoin becoming digital gold. Is that a trick or is that a treat, and why?
I think, I think maybe it's a treat because it's an easy way to explain it to normies.
That makes sense. I can get behind that. Morgan, what do you think? Are we kind of veering away from peer-to-peer cash and calling it digital gold? Does that go against what Satoshi initially wanted, do you think?
No, I think it's definitely a treat. In order for something to be a good medium of exchange, which is peer-to-peer cash, it has to be a good store of value. If something's not a good store of value, then people don't want to accept it as a medium of exchange. So it has to be a good store of value, in which case digital gold would be a treat.
Okay, a couple of treats. I like it. Great start. Those are much better than the tricks. Okay, so Susie, the banks offering Bitcoin custody. Would Satoshi consider that a trick or a treat? What do you think?
That's a trick.
It's a trick. Why is it a trick? Tell us more.
Look, the thing that makes Bitcoin special is your ability to hold it yourself in self-custody. If it's with a third party, then it isn't Satoshi's vision. And so therefore, I think that unless you're holding Bitcoin yourself, you're not really utilizing it for what it was really meant for.
Mm-hmm.
Morgan, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I think it's a treat. So I agree with you that it maybe is not what was intended by the white paper. However, I do think, and especially as a financial advisor working with clients where position sizes get relatively large and self-custody does start to get uncomfortable for the, the hardcore Bitcoiner that's out there who, is fine securing their own keys and having their treasure map and doing whatever it is that they're doing in their home to make sure that everything is secure. And I can argue all day about whether or not that's actually useful, because then family members have issues and all sorts of other things do come up as a result of that. I would say that it is better for people to be involved. And if getting involved does mean that they have someone custodying for them, let's say through an ETF or through a bank or however it is, I think it is better to be involved than not to be involved. And that ultimately what I've seen happen, especially with clients, is that they do tend to end up in self-custody. And so you've got to have a starting place. For some people, they've got to dip their toe in the water before they can, jump into the deep end. And so I would say the average person actually can't just, go all in and have self-custody and do all the things that are intended by the white paper. And so in my opinion, anything that gives people optionality to do this is going to be a treat.
Yeah, good point. And I do want people to have options. I would just like to say that.
I know exactly what but I agree with you that it is a trick in some ways and it's a treat in other ways.
Yeah, it kind of begs the question, ladies, kind of what Susie mentioned earlier, being open, if new information comes out about Bitcoin, is there a potential that maybe we're not a fan of it? In the same breath, if Satoshi saw Bitcoin evolving through these 17 years, do you think it's possible that his initial vision might change compared to, along the line as new information becomes available? Kind of what Morgan was saying, this is an on-ramp for a lot of people that aren't ready to self-custody, which is ultimately spreading the good word. So, Susie, do you think Satoshi would be a little flexible with his thinking of how Bitcoin is evolving as opposed to how maybe he thought it would be initially when he wrote the white paper?
Yeah, I think that he'd definitely keep an open mind, but somebody who has thought that long and deep about creating something as amazing as Bitcoin probably really had a strong vision in their head at the time that they created it. And I don't know if this is the same kind of analogy, but as you were saying that, I was thinking, is it the same question as asking if Jesus would be Catholic if he came back? Is it along those kind of lines? Because I once again, I think Satoshi's dead.
You think Satoshi's dead? Okay, interesting. What do you think, Morgan? Do you think, would it be in line with Satoshi's vision to be a little malleable and change maybe his initial thought process as he sees it evolving? Almost, I think bank custodies and stuff like that are almost a necessary evil at this point, right? To get more people on board. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of the block size wars back in the day. I'm oh no, this was Satoshi's vision. No, this is Satoshi's vision. And obviously, we ended up with a coin called Satoshi's vision. So some people were like, "This is what Satoshi's vision was," and now it's weather data and garbage on the blockchain and really bad, terrible pictures. So I don't think that that's Satoshi's vision either. You know what I mean? I think that it's hard to know, obviously, because it's hard to know without knowing more than what he put in the white paper, what his vision for it was. I do imagine, though, that he probably had more of a plebe mindset about, self-custody and peer-to-peer cash and so forth. And I imagine sacrifice security of the network for block size and so forth.
Right.
So I do think in some ways we are still where he, right? Just because larger players are getting involved and they're offering different products on Bitcoin doesn't mean that the main part of Bitcoin, right, the thing that he started is not still here. Like, right, there are lots of us that are still running nodes, holding Bitcoin in self-custody. So, and I do think that's not going to change. You know, there's always going to be a wave of people that are doing what, quote unquote, we think wasn't.
Yeah, I forgot about BSV. I actually spoke to some BSV people when I was at the Copa versus Wright trial, and they were there and they were worshipping Craig Wright. Not that I want to. Oh, it's Halloween. We can mention his name, can't we? And it was the first time that I'd been completely shocked because they did keep going on about that, about what Satoshi's vision was, and it was ad nauseum. And they think that the very fact that we have nodes and miners is not Satoshi's vision, because they only mention nodes in the white paper, and the fact that we've now brought in miners apparently isn't the right kind of approach according to the BSV crowd. But yeah, it's amazing that that becomes almost like a religion as well, where everybody's arguing either side and you never really get to the bottom.
Yeah, people are really passionate about the Bitcoin space, like it's a religion or something. So I got to say,
that's an understatement.
Analogy is very apropos, especially during today's spooky season. He is technically a ghost that came back from the dead, some might tell you, a Holy Ghost to that matter. So yeah, I appreciate the insights on that, ladies. And joining us to talk more about this, we have a man with a very amazing podcast of his own, Rajat Soni, joining us in our discussion today. Rajat, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I don't know if I'm on screen. Oh, there you go. How's everything going?
Happy Halloween and Whitepaper Day, my friend. How are you? Thanks for joining our panel today.
Doing great. I've been listening to you guys, Decentra, Suze, and Morgan.
Yeah.
Great conversation. I think nobody really knows what Bitcoin, what Satoshi's vision truly was, and I guess it's the way that I see it. It's almost like a scam to get people to just buy into whatever the new coin is.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Yeah. So if you were tuning in before, Rajat, you saw we're playing a little game called Trick or Treat. Just to recap the rules here, all we're doing is I'm throwing out statements. You're going to tell us whether it's a trick, and that means it goes against Satoshi's vision, or if it's a treat, it's actually good for Bitcoin. So we're going to start with you on this one, Rajat. The next trick or treat, the Fed ending quantitative tightening for the next bull run. You think that'll be a trick or treat for the next bull run?
Probably a treat.
A treat. Tell us why.
Right,
why would Sony? Why is that a treat?
If they're ending quantitative tightening, it means that they're with quantitative tightening, what it is essentially they're letting bonds that they own mature, and then they're not using that money to buy more bonds. So what they mean by the end of quantitative tightening is that they're potentially going to replenish those bonds and put them back on their balance sheet. And then quantitative easing is the opposite of quantitative tightening, which means that they're going to buy more bonds and they're going to increase their balance sheet. So, I mean, at the end of the day, anything the Fed does is a trick. It's all a scam. It's all a scam. It doesn't really matter to Bitcoin, but in the short term, it'll definitely help Bitcoin's price go up. But I mean, as Bitcoiners, we don't really care about the price. What we care about is having more Bitcoin.
Right. Ladies, what do you think? Are you in agreement that is also a treat, at least in the short term, for Bitcoin? Susie, what do you think?
Well, the markets didn't really react, did they, when he said that? So it felt like it was already priced in. And I don't know if Bitcoin rallies necessarily because money gets cheaper. I think it usually rallies when people are fearful and they're worried about their currency debasing. So the fact that it didn't rally on that news makes me wonder if actually there's more to it for Bitcoin's rally, and it's not necessarily cheap money.
Interesting. Morgan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think over a long period of time that certainly if the Fed is going to be easing, that it'll be good for Bitcoin. I don't know if it necessarily translates into any kind of short-term rally, but certainly, right, if they're making more money and we're being more and more debased over time, then certainly you would want to hold Bitcoin over dollars. And that would be the case anyways, right? Even if we were at a normal inflation rate, normal for the Fed of 2%, right, we would still want to hold a better money than something else. So I would imagine that it will lead to more inflation because it always does. But I also imagine that because of the situation in real estate in the United States and how unaffordable things have become, that they feel like it's necessary to lower rates to help people get more affordable housing. And ultimately, I'm sure it might have something to do with the midterm elections as well, to keep people happy with what's going on with the current administration. So, I mean, maybe it's me reading into it too much, but again, always a treat, I think, for Bitcoin. And I agree 100% with Rajat that it's always a trick from the Fed.
Okay, but Jerome Powell did say that inflation was still elevated, and yet he still dropped the rates. It makes you wonder if they know that there's no way inflation is coming down. It's inevitable that it's just going to go up.
Yeah, spooky times for sure. And I got a really spooky one next, and this is very apropos for this year. As you know, institutional ETFs and Wall Street inflows have been kind of one of the big narratives we've seen in this 2025 cycle. So, Susie, trick or treat to those institutional ETFs and Wall Street inflows? Are those going against what Satoshi always wanted in the first place, or were those inevitable things that had to happen in order for Bitcoin to gain mass acceptance?
Both. I think that it's inevitable. I think it has to happen. It has to be integrated with the financial system. I do think people are maybe forgetting why Bitcoin is important, which is the fact that you can hold it yourself. Like, I know, I understand everything around. I know that it's inevitable that nation states are going to get on board and that ETFs are going to have it, but it does make people's Bitcoin vulnerable. It really does. And I do think that there could come a point where a lot of it is taken or confiscated or lost. And I just think it's very, very risky. And so although I see it as inevitable, and I probably would buy an ETF if I could put it into my pension, I don't know. I don't really like it.
Yeah. What do you think, Rajat? Are institutional ETFs causing the ghost of Satoshi to roll in his grave, or is he okay with how these things are evolving over time?
I mean, the way that I see it, Bitcoin is for everyone, right? I don't think we can't stop anybody from owning it. At the end of the day, the ETFs are just another owner of Bitcoin. I think most people don't quite understand that they don't own Bitcoin, though, if they have the ETF. The ETFs are like BlackRock is the one that owns that Bitcoin. Fidelity is the one that owns that Bitcoin. At the end of the day, if you don't have Bitcoin in your own wallet, then you don't own it. And to Satoshi, I don't think it really makes a difference, because whoever it is, own over 1 million coins themselves, right? So I think they just see if they were alive, I just see that they see BlackRock as another participant. At the end of the day, I mean, most of this was already predicted, right? Most of this was Hal Finney said, I think, that that this is where things are going. Institutional investors are inevitable, and they give more people access to this, to the fiat exposure to this thing. So I don't see it as I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Morgan, what do you think? Is it kind of a little bit of both too, or do you think Satoshi is currently haunting Larry Fink wherever he goes as a result of their giant Bitcoin hoard? Or is it for everyone, including the Larry Finks of the world? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would add to what Rajat said. I do think Bitcoin is for everyone, and I do think also that everyone is on their own journey and how they're going to hold it and be exposed to it and so forth. And I agree that, like, yes, you don't own Bitcoin, but you own a receivable, and most people don't understand what that means, right? You have when you own, like, even if you, let's say, have it at a custodian like Coinbase or River, wherever you're holding your Bitcoin, right? You don't actually own the Bitcoin outright because you're not holding the Bitcoin, but you have a receivable on that Bitcoin that, like, you have a right to that Bitcoin. And it's the same thing with the ETF, right? And my understanding was that they had they will have in-kind transfers, where if somebody actually did want to claim the Bitcoin that they had, that they would be able to pull out Bitcoin in kind without paying taxes. I don't know if they've actually implemented that yet, but I know that that was in the works. And so if that's an option, though, for people who own the ETF, that's a great option, right? Because when they do become comfortable with self-custody, then they can do it. But in the meantime, like we were saying earlier, right, it's not, self-custody isn't actually for everybody. I think that, like, it's often touted as something that's very, very easy. But when the dollar values get very high and people are thinking about it in dollar values, not in Bitcoin terms, right? Because that's what people tend to do. They tend to think in their local currency or whatever it is, right? That it starts to get, for some people, nerve-wracking to have that kind of money just sitting, let's say, in a mattress or whatever, right? Whereas maybe 1,000 years ago, that was all that they had to do anyway. So it wouldn't have been a huge stretch to go from holding that in your mattress to holding a hardware wallet or whatever it is. So I think it we have to keep that in mind. And I think that probably Satoshi would be understanding of that, right? That people want to be involved and they want to get involved in however way that they can, and that any player is going to be a good player, right, to help Bitcoin over the long term. And like Rajat said, yeah, that if BlackRock is a holder and so is Satoshi, then that's just the way that it is.
Yeah. And Morgan, you brought up a good point too about people not really understanding like the value of things in Satoshis and in Bitcoin. So my question to the group is, and let's start with you, Rajat, on this one. What do you think we need to do to start getting the world to help them see things in the price of Satoshis? Like, what's it going to take for that? You got 8 decimal places. It's a hard thing for people to wrap their heads around. How do we go about getting people to see the world denominated in Bitcoin? What are your thoughts?
So one of the really interesting things that I find about Bitcoin is that this is a multi-generational asset. This is something that's going to take years, decades to really become ingrained in society. When people say that, oh, Bitcoin isn't being used as money yet, so it's worthless, it just means that they have very, very high time preference. They want it to happen immediately. But this is going to happen over generations. So let's say, for example, one of my sister-in-laws, my wife's sister, had well, 2 of them had kids. And for them, because they're going to grow up around me, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that Bitcoin is a part of their lives. And if I can, I'm going to buy Bitcoin for them, right? I'm going to hold on to it. But by the time they're older and they're around me all this time, they're going to see that, okay, this guy, how did this guy get so rich? How did he do this when the majority of people around me are struggling? And then I think it's just going to, I think that they're going to be very curious. They're going to think about, okay, why is this happening? What's happening here? And I think that's just going to lead to them wanting to use Bitcoin in their day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen immediately. It's not going to happen overnight, but eventually, for me, it took 4 years. I see the price of everything in terms of Bitcoin now. Yeah. I see, if I look at my house, I'm thinking, oh man, this thing is losing value all the time, while the people around me are thinking, oh, great decision, you bought a house, the value of the house is going up in fiat terms. And I'm just thinking fiat is meaningless to me, but it's going to take some time for more and more people to really adapt that way of thinking. The Canadian dollar is even worse than the US dollar. The US dollar is bad, but the Canadian dollar is even worse. So I think it's more like a needs-based kind of, it's based on your needs. If you people in Nigeria, for example, I know if I have a friend in Nigeria, he already thinks of everything in terms of Bitcoin. If your currency is worse, then you're probably gonna transition faster. But it'll take some time. I think people will just have to be surrounded by it. They'll have to be exposed to it. They'll have to get some benefit from holding it. If you don't want to hold it, then you're not going to see the difference, right? There's a lot of people on X who can't see it because they're always exposed to legacy assets. They're always exposed to stocks, to real estate, to bonds, and they don't really care about Bitcoin. And they don't care if the price of things are decreasing in terms of Bitcoin. But that's the thing. You have to learn about what Bitcoin is. You have to figure out what it is, and it takes time. I would say that it could take 50 to 60 years for this thing to really be deeply ingrained in society.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. I think the real inflection point will become when, like, it's a little bit easier to wrap our head around the idea of like a house in Bitcoin terms, right? If it's $1 million house, okay, it's going to cost 9 or 10 Bitcoin right now. Easy to understand. Yeah. But I think about thinking about everyday items in Bitcoin. I'll give you an example. We had Grant Cardone on the show last week, and we played a Price is Right style game with him. And the game was, I'm going to give you an escalating items that start with modern household items. We started with dish soap, and I want you to give me what you think the price is in Satoshis. He could not have been way just so far off, but nobody thinks that way. So is there maybe a better way we can
Rajat could do it.
I could easily do it. Honestly, I could.
Could you?
If you tell me the price of something, I could do it. I'm telling you.
That's because I think he said dish soap, and
do it. Come on, this is the test I want to see.
Do it.
Yeah, what was it? So I think if I said dish soap, how many Satoshis roughly do you think that would cost? I think I remember what that one cost in Satoshi.
So let's say dish soap costs $3 today. It'd probably be 2,700 Satoshis.
That's pretty good. I think we had the dish soap at $1.99, and I think it was 3,000. So that's pretty good. I think Grant said 300,000. I was like,
wow.
But I put him on the spot, so he was doing the best he could,
Yeah.
A way we could be going about this better. My thought is, what if we invented a plugin for Amazon so that every time you go to Amazon, it's the current price in dollars and then Satoshis. And then people are going to be seeing that all the time. Like, does someone know Bezos? Can we make a call? Is there a better way? Morgan, what do you think? Is there a better way we can be introducing the world to a Bitcoin through like a Bitcoin denominated lens? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I thought Marty had this. I thought Marty Bent, they had put this out. Maybe it wasn't Marty. Maybe it was Matt Odell, but they had like the Tales from the Crypt. They had like some sort of plugin that you can put on where it like overlaid on your browser and showed you what things cost in Satoshi. And Satoshis. I tend to agree with you. Yeah, I have a really hard time doing the like the coffees and the dish soaps and that kind of a thing. I have a really easy time doing like a house, a car. And also like the trade-offs are really easy with clients, right? Because the clients are like, I want to go get this car and they're a Bitcoiner. And then you're like, well, it's going to be, you're going to spend 1 Bitcoin on it. And they're like, 1 Bitcoin, I can't part with 1 Bitcoin, So it makes it a lot easier. Whereas like when you're talking to more fiat friendly clients, like, you can't, there's no equivalent. You can't be like, oh, well, it's X number of shares of Apple stock. And they're like, they don't care, it's meaningless. It's not the same kind of denomination because it's not a money, obviously. So it's not as meaningful. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I feel like it is going to take time. And also the more that businesses pop up where they're actually pricing things in Bitcoin, I think that will be helpful to people. Right. Like it's very niche right now where businesses pop up because they want Bitcoiners to go there so that there could be sort of a Bitcoin place where people go. But over time, I do think that as people are using it and as it's growing as a currency side by side with fiat currency, that eventually it'll be that people are actually offering this is like a point of sale. And like that we're getting to a place where actually point of sale is a lot easier, right? There's more technology out there to make it easier for people. Like there's, companies like Zapright that are out there trying to make it a lot easier for people to actually use their Bitcoin. And so I agree with Rajat that it does take time. And, we don't know how long. Like it could be, it could be 10 years from now, things look wildly different, or it could be 60 years from now, or it could be not in our, it could be 100 years from now. So where people are really like, they're only thinking in Bitcoin. I do think though, that the longer that Bitcoin is around, the longer that it persists, the more people that get involved, the more people start thinking about at least these big ticket items in terms of Bitcoin so that they can really look at the opportunity costs. Because I have seen that time with my clients that they do tend to think more about, okay, like you were mentioning earlier, Rajat, like as far as like high time preference versus low time preference, it really does help change the script when you're like, well, I want to own this money because this money actually matters. Whereas, I don't really care about owning fiat because what is it doing for me? And I have to invest it in something anyways to make sure that it doesn't lose value. And I have to spend it as quickly as possible to make sure that I can get a good price and so forth. So it really does shift the script.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear you, Morgan, talk about your clients. And I know you work with some really, really great clients that have means, and they're talking about buying a car, and then they hear 1 Bitcoin. It's like, maybe I don't need the G-Wagon. When if you just told them it was like 100 grand, they might be like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And it really reframes people's minds. So my wonder is, in the same way that, it's a lot easier to teach kids different languages when they're younger. Their brains are a little more malleable and willing to accept new information. I wonder, do we need to create, like, especially for those of you on the panel that have kids, do we need like a children's book, like an Everybody Poops, but for Bitcoin, like everybody Bitcoins, and we start getting the kids at a young age kind of understanding the world through that Bitcoin denominated lens. Susie, I know you've got a couple wonderful children. What do you think? Is that do we need to really start them really young? Could that help?
Well, you do, don't you? I mean, if you live with Bitcoiner parents, I mean, both my kids, I've paid them in sats. They now have skin in the game and they watch it go up and down and a little bit, like, like £30, and they can watch it go up and down and they're aware of it and they're aware of the price fluctuations. But going back to your point about being priced in sats, I think it is both cultural, how much pain that each country feel, because in the UK, we don't pay attention to it because the pain that we're feeling is just very slow and insidious. And I don't think that people are really feeling it in the way that they should do. But it's also technical. And when you said about the different prices, we have a fantastic terminal over here that's available in the UK called a Musket terminal, and it shows that you can pay in Bitcoin and in card payments just as a standard, and the fees are actually cheaper than normal payment devices. And my husband is an osteopath and he now has 5 clients that pay him in Bitcoin because of this terminal that exists. And so even when he sees patients, it's still another touch point. So they see when they pay with their card that there is an option for Bitcoin, and that then naturally creates a curiosity around it. So even if they're not paying in it, all these little things will slowly normalize it. And if we can see more things like that, I think it will happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, though the trajectory seems very akin to a lot of the other financial technologies we've seen over the years, right? Like it was checks. It took like 15, 20 years adoption cycle, credit cards, the internet. Rajat, for you, do you think Bitcoin's kind of on a similar trajectory? Do you think it's growing faster or slower than some of those previous products that I mentioned, or do you think it's right on schedule right now?
I think it's definitely faster because, like you said, checks, they're not digital.
Right.
With Bitcoin, anybody can access it at any time. So it just gives everybody the ability to use it to save for the future, to spend on whatever they need to. I think Bitcoin, I'm just guessing here. I think it should be faster, no?
Yeah, no, I think so. And Morgan, what do you feel like? With technology today, we have the internet, information transfers at a moment's notice. So do you think we're expecting more of like an exponential growth curve here, and we're just kind of getting ready for liftoff right now?
I definitely think that. I want to add first about the Bitcoin book for kids. There's a great one out there. It was written by Michael Karras. It's called Bitcoin, The Tale of Bitville. It's actually the reason why my dad knows what Bitcoin is because he said, explain it to me like I'm 5, and I gave him the book for 5-year-olds.
Oh, awesome.
So people should look that up. It's a great book. And it's not just for kids, it's for adults too.
Apparently.
To get to your question though about like quickness of adoption. Yeah, I do think that like for older generations that are not as involved in technology, that it's more challenging, right? And so if we look globally at where assets are, right, the baby boomers obviously hold the majority of the wealth, like from an individual standpoint. And so I do think that as that wealth is being passed to a newer generation, I mean, what I'm finding, at least in my client base, is that like people are not as interested in holding stocks and bonds and traditional assets. That could be also that I'm biased because I am a Bitcoin financial advisor, and because of that, people do come in and they're looking for my specific advice. But also I hear from other financial advisors who are not doing what I'm doing that they get questions about this stuff all the time from younger generations. And so and that's not to say that baby boomers aren't involved, because I certainly know quite a few and have some in my practice who are involved. But it's just saying that like it's going to be a smaller percentage, obviously, because the learning curve is much steeper for someone who's not as involved day to day in technology as it would be for somebody else. And so I see it though with my kids, right? It's a lot easier for my kids. My kids know how to use my phone. My kids have figured out how to do things on my phone without even unlocking it, which I think is an Apple problem.
Do you know what? My son came up to me with my phone and just went, and he unlocked it with my face. I was concentrating on something else, and I didn't even realize what he was doing.
So yeah, like they're able to do things on tablets and whatever that you know. I remember when I first started using it, like I had to like fumble around a little bit to figure it out. Yeah, it's you know it's intuitive and you figure it out. But like compared to, let's say, like my mom or dad when they first got their phone, like it was a challenge, right? They were trying to figure out, and then when the button went away, it was even more challenging. So I just feel like for the younger generations that are coming up, it's going to be a lot more seamless, I think. And so I do think that we're at the precipice of something really special, because not only has Bitcoin been around for 17 years, right? And also it's been trading since I think 2010, I want to say. So so trading for about 15 years now. So we've got this track record that's going, and it's a $2 trillion asset class, and we've got all these big players involved, and it's becoming like coursework that people are now learning, right? And it's becoming something that like you can't really avoid anymore. So we're at the precipice of not only institutions and governments and all sorts of people getting involved, but also a new generation of people coming up who are very technologically savvy. And so I do think it's tailwinds from here.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. You know, we're these kids today, they know the computers better than we do, and they will always grow up with Bitcoin being a thing in their lives. So the apprehension we've seen from a lot of the older guard to invest in this new asset class will not be there the same way it is today, as this new generation is always growing up with Bitcoin being a thing in their universe. So I definitely agree with you. And Morgan, I know you have to get out of here, but I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoy trick-or-treating with the kiddos, and happy Halloween and Whitepaper Day to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's good to be on this panel. Susie, you're amazing. Rajat, good to see you. Hank, thank you so much. And I'll see you all soon.
Cheers. All right. And then there were 3. All right, guys. So I want to pivot here a little bit and talk more about Satoshi's original reasoning for creating Bitcoin in the white paper, right? I mean, Bitcoin was born in 2008. It rose from the ashes of that horrible global financial crisis that we all remember. But now we're here again. 17 years later, we're talking about liquidity, rate cuts, and market panics. So, Rajat, are we experiencing just some financial deja vu here, or does this prove that Satoshi's original diagnosis was spot on from the jump? What do you think?
I think Satoshi was right, but it's going to need a lot of. I like this concept of creative destruction.
Tell me about that.
Where I think what's happening right now is there's a lot of different alternatives for Bitcoin, and then all those alternatives have to break down for Bitcoin to really stand out. Because what it is all these alternatives are giving people a reason to study Bitcoin. So let's say you invest in some random coin. A few weeks ago, there was a coin called Cadena, Kadena, that just collapsed, and everybody thought it was decentralized. We should hold it for our savings. They were thinking that, but then once it fell apart, people could start looking into Bitcoin, right? And before that happened, what I mean by creative destruction is Bitcoin is a purely capitalist means of saving. And what I mean by that is whoever owns Bitcoin, everybody else has to compete with them to own Bitcoin, right? So let's say if you want to buy Bitcoin from someone, you have to pay them for Bitcoin. You have to pay them for it. If you choose to save in something else, then you're contributing to that creative destruction process where the world is trying to discover different ways of using money, different ways of saving. And let's say, for example, if we create some kind of gold-backed currency, that's another form of creative destruction. I think the world has to go through that. The world has to see that the people who are creating these currencies, I mean, they're directly benefiting from them. And Bitcoin is the only thing that nobody benefits from other than, let's say, the holders, right? The holders are the ones that benefit from Bitcoin. Whereas, let's say you have a gold-backed currency. Let's say the BRICS currency, it's backed by gold. Who's going to hold the gold? Those are questions that people don't really ask, right? And when they say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna switch to BRICS, we're gonna switch to a gold-backed currency," who's gonna hold the gold? Why not? Why not have a form of money that's a bearer instrument that people can hold on their own, and they don't have to rely on other people to hold it for them? Why would you want to go to an IOU-based system when we're already in an IOU-based system? So I think what Bitcoin is going to do over time is, I think what back to the question you were asking, is Satoshi's vision for the world and for money, I guess is it where we're headed? Is that what's happening? I think that it is. And it requires, like I said, it requires a lot of creative destruction along the way to make sure that people actually understand where this thing is going and the value of it. So no matter what happens to every other currency, Bitcoin will survive. And they're going to see that I think somebody was it Morgan or was it you, Susie? Somebody mentioned that the longer that Bitcoin survives, the more people will want it, and that's the Lindy effect right there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, proof of concept. I mean, it's just kind of proof of concept, right? The longer it's around, and people say, "Hey, it's still here," it becomes an easier thing for people to trust going forward. Now, that kind of begs an interesting question, though. You know, there's a lot of talk about who Satoshi is. We talked about it earlier. Susie, for you, if we ever actually found out, if one day Hal came up or Elon or I don't know, Jack Dorsey or something said, "I was Satoshi all along," what do you think that would do to the perception of Bitcoin globally? Would that be a person-dependent thing, or the very fact that we would know that a person is alive who created it, could that kind of, cause a destruction of the entire Bitcoin ecosystem for some reason? Like, what would happen if someone came out and said that I'm Satoshi today?
I think that would be awful.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it could ruin Bitcoin, actually. Because the one thing that we say is there's no CEO, nobody controls it. And I know that would technically still be true because of the journey that it's gone on. It would still feel like there was a figurehead. And I think the fact that the million coins are still there, even if they said, "Look, I got rid of the keys, I don't have them," there would always be that doubt. And so I think it would be very dangerous if Satoshi came out back. I think that would be terrible. And although I would like to know, and I think it's fun to guess, and you think that I don't want to know.
Yeah, Rajat, I see you nodding your head. Do you, even if it was somebody who seemed good intentioned, the very fact that we could pin a person who actually created Bitcoin, would that just cause everything to crumble and disintegrate at its core, or what do you think?
I don't think it would crumble and disintegrate, but I agree with Susie. She was saying how it would give it a figurehead, and I feel like the one of the problems with humans is that we have biases and we see people in a certain way. If you see anybody, you're going to think, oh yeah, this is their background, right? So let's say, for example, if Elon Musk comes out as being Satoshi, then I think the issue with that would be people don't like Elon Musk and they're going to automatically want to disassociate themselves with Bitcoin. So that figurehead, it's not necessarily a CEO. And as Susie said, Bitcoin's already gone through that path. It's gone through the path of people knowing that this thing can't be messed with, right? It's money that you can't mess around with. But if let's say Elon Musk comes out and says that he's Satoshi, people are going to be constantly talking about, oh yeah, we don't want to own Bitcoin because Elon Musk did this, and this. Those biases definitely play a role in everything that we do.
That makes sense. So it'd be really easy to attach personal opinions about that person with Bitcoin, and then ultimately that would have some kind of effect depending on who it is. Unless it was like Mother Teresa came out, up from the dead and said, I don't
know, even she was a bit dodgy, wasn't she? If you read into her background, that's the thing. We've built a system where you shouldn't have to trust.
Yes, exactly.
That's a good
point.
Yeah,
even Mother Teresa. I mean, no matter who she was. I mean, I know who she was, but she probably had something going on, and there's probably people out there who know more about her than we do. Right. And there's probably something that she did in the background that was not good. And people will question the intentions of Bitcoin because of that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No matter how good or perceived good a person you are, someone's going to have a problem with something. And that's going to cause other issues, especially if you're the one who's claiming you.
I don't think Mother Teresa was actually that good, though. If you look into her, I think she's actually a bad example. I think she was probably a pretty unsavory character.
I thought she was, isn't she like a saint? Technically, no.
I don't think she was actually made. Was she made a saint? Was she actually made a saint?
I don't know. They just made that 15-year-old kid a saint who was like some kind of internet whiz. I don't know how the sainthood thing works. But
at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all make mistakes, and I personally wouldn't want it. The good thing about gold is that nobody invented it,
right?
And that's why it's survived 5,000 years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
However long it's money, right? If we suddenly see, oh, this person created Bitcoin, there's going to be biases. No matter who it is, it doesn't matter who it is.
Yes.
We don't know people at a certain level, right? Like, let's say, for example, if I created Bitcoin and there's people in my life who hate me, they're not
not possible. I was gonna.
That's what I would say. I would hope that it's not possible, but there are probably people who think, oh, this guy's a bad actor. He's done something wrong. Maybe it wasn't even intentional. Right. But that's the thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Biases. Right. As humans, we have biases and we're going to act on those biases. So I would say it would be a bad thing. I agree with Susie.
Yeah. And you make an interesting point, too, because like gold is already here. So there's kind of an inherent neutrality to gold. Right. But if you created Bitcoin, someone's going to think, well, you must be benefiting from that somehow. And I don't think people would be okay if Elon or whoever did it. They're like, well, you got the biggest Bitcoin stack in the world now. I can't trust this. So yeah, that's super interesting.
Well, 1 million coins is a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like tens of billions of dollars right now. Is it close to maybe like 100?
It's like 130, 110 billion dollars or something.
That many. Okay. So he's like top 5 or 10 richest people in the world in theory, right? At that point.
Yeah.
Rumba. And we're at an interesting place right now in the Bitcoin journey, specifically this year, right? Because for the longest time, we saw traditional finance literally just laughing at Bitcoin. And slowly but surely, we've been seeing the big players acquiesce to client demands and start accepting Bitcoin. Jamie Dimon is the one I always think of. And now JP Morgan said they're coming out next year because their clients are saying, we want exposure. And, now TradFi, we're seeing them launch all these ETFs. They're holding BTC. They're selling custody solutions. So, Rajat, this one's for you. Do you feel like Wall Street has been possessed by Bitcoin, or did it finally repent and it's getting on the right side of history right now? What do you think?
I think that the way that Bitcoin works, it's all about it's almost like about being selfish, right? When you're buying Bitcoin, you're buying Bitcoin that other people can't buy. So the way that I see it, Wall Street is selfish, right? Wall Street's doing this because they know they can make money from it. And more importantly than Jamie Dimon, do you guys know this guy on Twitter? What's his name? Guy Talks Finance.
No, who's that?
So he used to always talk badly about Bitcoin. He'd say, "Oh, Bitcoin's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's this, it's that." But you can see from somebody like him that he finally studied it. He finally figured it out, and now he's the average person. That's what I mean. That's the reason. That's why I said, okay, he's more important than Jamie Dimon. It's that even the average person with no finance background can come around to this. So I think that Wall Street is inevitable. I think they're, because the way that I see it, if you have Bitcoin backed loans, then you have, if you give out Bitcoin backed loans, you have nearly no risk because you're going to take the Bitcoin into your own self custody. So let's say let's say I'm part of Wall Street and Susie wants to borrow fiat and she gives me Bitcoin and then she can't pay me back. I can sell some of that Bitcoin to make myself whole again. And you can't do that with real estate. You can't do that with stocks. With stocks is a little different because brokerages have self custody of it, so they can sell the stock. But with real estate, you can't do that. And real estate's the biggest market right now for lending. There's like $370 trillion worth of real estate in the market, and a lot of that is backed by mortgages, by fake money, essentially. If Bitcoin can replace real estate as collateral, think about how positive that would be for the world. But I don't think Wall Street has that incentive. I think Wall Street's incentive is making sure that they have the least risky collateral, and Bitcoin is that least risky collateral.
What are your guys' thoughts on? I'm glad you brought up real estate here, Rajat, because like Grant Cardone is doing these kind of Frankenstein deals now, where he's buying 300 unit apartment complexes, but he's adding like 100 Bitcoin on top of that. So it's like the price might be 60, but it's like he's paying 40 in cash and then only 10 million in Bitcoin. How do you think that's going to affect things? When he was on the show last week, he claimed he's going to orange pill more people than anyone. Do you think that that's a realistic expectation if we're starting to fuse real estate and Bitcoin together into this Frankenstein monster? What do you think, Susie?
I don't know. I'm not. I'm not really sure how that plays out.
Because it's an asset that a lot of people still consider a risk-on asset, which in real estate traditionally people think is like one of the most stable things you can do.
Yeah, I'm over it. Like I personally wouldn't buy property, and it isn't very portable. You can't just sell a fraction of a house. I think it has had its day. It's all gone up in value. I can't imagine there are many more gains to have. And I think, I don't know, will houses soon just be there for their utility value rather than the investment aspect of it? I hope so. That's what I would like to see happen with property. But it takes people kind of 10, 20 years to catch up when it comes to things like that. So like the whole property boom, everyone was really excited. It's like anyone could talk about it. So you got to buy property, and it's going to take a long time for that to come out of their psyches. It's a little bit like when they said that you shouldn't eat fat, and then they put sugar in everything, and then they're like, no, sugar's bad, and then they change it again. I think the time frame is 17 years for something to change in people's psyches. So I think this overhang's going to be seen for a long time. But obviously Bitcoin's the best performing asset of the decade, isn't it? Like why would you buy anything else? You just wouldn't.
Well, I mean, there is a utility to a house, right? I can live in a house. I unfortunately can't live in my Bitcoin yet. So Rajat, the question I guess for you would be like, is this maybe kind of a nice marriage that benefits both sides? Because real estate isn't viewed the same way, but I can live in it. But if you combine it with Bitcoin, I get exposure to that. But I also, in a lot of people's minds, get the perceived safety of real estate while also getting exposure to Bitcoin. So do you think that ultimately could be a good thing for both? Or am I maybe missing something here and my foresight's off right now? What are your thoughts?
I think the monetization of real estate was one of the worst things that we ever did, because it's made it so that people can't even meet their basic needs. Right? I don't like real estate as an investment. I used to like it when I didn't quite grasp what Bitcoin was. There's a podcast of me on Simply Bitcoin where I'm saying how people are going to need to have everything in their portfolio. You're going to need to have stocks. You're going to need to have real estate. But I don't believe in that anymore. The way that I see it, real estate being monetized has been a terrible way for us to try to progress as a society. Think about how many people can't afford even one house, whereas people like Grant Cardone have thousands upon thousands of units. And I don't care. I don't care if they buy apartments. I don't really care about that. What I care about is the fact that he can increase the price whenever he wants to. He has control over the people living there. And he's taking up valuable space for people to build more homes. But then at the end of the day, people can do whatever they want to. The value of the real estate that he's buying is going to trend to zero in terms of Bitcoin. I think he would be better off just putting that whole amount of money into Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'll let him know next time I talk to him. Or I'll let you know next time you
100%.
talk to him.
Yeah,
Well, Rajat, I know you have to get out of here. You probably got some spooky Halloween plans, but thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure. And just so you know, you are still one of your videos highest performing in the RoxomTV universe is with you.
Wow.
So keep doing what
Happy
you're
to
doing,
hear
man. You're crushing it.
I appreciate you having me, Susie. Very nice to meet you.
You too.
Amazing. Great
Always
conversation.
a pleasure, Rajat, and happy Whitepaper Day and Halloween night to you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
You as well. Bye, guys.
Yep. Cheers.
Bye.
All right, Susie. And then there were two here. So we got a little more. We'll probably end up here in the next 15 or so, but I got a couple more points to chat with you if that's okay. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So one thing I was kind of thinking about as I was doing my due diligences and I was taking a peek at the white paper, I never really sat down and read it, but I sat down and I read it. And, it talks about Bitcoin being peer-to-peer cash, but somewhere along the way, it seems like the Bitcoin spell changed a little bit and Bitcoin became seen as more of a digital gold. So my question is, do you feel like that transformation was kind of inevitable, or did we collectively choose comfort over chaos right now? What do you think? Was this always going to happen?
It's a process, I think, and it has to start off as a store of value and then move to a medium of exchange. So I think that this is just part of Bitcoin's evolution. We discussed earlier that it's only 17 years old, so it's really done a lot in that space of time, and we are kind of on our way to it being a medium of exchange. I've always had issues with the peer-to-peer cash idea because it can't necessarily work offline. So anything that can't accommodate maybe war-torn countries or places where they don't have communications, I think it kind of fails a little bit there. And obviously it needs to be quicker and faster. So there are things that need to happen for it to become a proper peer-to-peer cash, and there are a lot of interesting solutions that are being worked on at the moment. So for example, Jack Dorsey's BitChat that uses Bluetooth,
right?
That then takes it to that next level for it to become a kind of peer-to-peer cash. And I heard that Baltic Honey Badger, this blew me away for some reason. I mention it all the time just because I was just so like, wow. And now I've built it up too much and everyone's going to think, really, is that it? But when you think of, say, Nosta and the relays and the way that they communicate, they can actually communicate via ham radio, which means that, yeah, exactly. So you can now, you've got ways where you can actually communicate offline. It might be slower, but it's still a way that doesn't rely on the internet. So I think we've got a lot of hurdles that we need to get past for it to be a proper peer-to-peer cash, and layer 2 scaling solutions are going to be a part of that. We have to probably really improve and build on Lightning, find ways to transact offline, and just keep going so it can move out of the store of value and fully into the medium exchange arena.
Yeah, despite the fact that we have made seemingly a lot of progress in only 17 years, there's clearly a long way to go. And there are products that haven't even been built yet that I think are going to essentially institute this vision of Bitcoin as peer-to-peer cash as opposed to just a store of value as we're seeing right now. And you're totally right. It is this process. And right now in this process, this year or in the last year and a half or so, we're seeing the ETFs pouring in. Governments are finally warming up to Bitcoin. So it kind of begs the question, right? Like, is this what we're seeing? Is this adoption the ultimate validation of Satoshi's idea, or is this the beginning of its domestication, by the very system that it initially wanted to escape? I don't know what the answer is here. What do you kind of think? It's complicated.
So complicated. That's such a good question.
Right.
It's really difficult because I do see how it's being co-opted in many, many, many ways. And Bitcoin is not perfect. It isn't. There are so many centralization risks. And I do think that there's a big risk to Wall Street holding a large portion of all of our Bitcoin. Because, it could technically be seized. It could. We have this trust, but it has happened in the past. And if all of a sudden, BlackRock has got a ton of it, and it's not yours, that really is a risky thing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that. I mean, mining is becoming centralized. The hardware is centralized. They've started, or Mara actually started censoring OFAC transactions. You know, there's a lot of issues. Yeah, they've proven that that can hypothetically happen. I mean, you'll always find a block where it can go through, but the point is it's being co-opted.
Yeah.
But if it can't survive this, and I've said this before, then it doesn't deserve to. So
Right.
I don't like it. Bitcoin's for everybody, but it needs to keep that anti-fragility, and it needs to power on through. And I think that we're going to have two different systems. I think you will have the TradFi system that Bitcoin has been integrated into, and then I think you have the other side where it is actually used as a freedom money, and the people that need access to it so that they can get rid of their or leave their authoritarian governments have financial inclusion in a system when their government obviously shuts them down. Because in the UK, I don't know if you know this, but 250 million people a year are debanked, and they're not even really given a reason. So I think that as long as Bitcoin can remain a freedom money for the people that need it, and that can still exist, then Wall Street have it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to know, right? I mean, Bitcoin has seemed pretty durable during its 17 years, starting from a simple 9 pages of text in the mailing list, and now it's influencing monetary policy and global liquidity and Twitter fights. So I guess my question would be then, what do you think is kind of the next phase for Bitcoin based on where we are now? Is it Bitcoin as global collateral, or is Bitcoin as global culture? Because there certainly is like an interesting culture to Bitcoin that I can't say that I've seen in any kind of other asset class, you know?
No, I know. That's so funny that you say that. And actually it becomes even more niche than that, because I've noticed weird little groupies around treasury companies.
Oh,
that's niche, isn't
yeah,
it? Like when you
niche.
think about it, like I can understand people loving Bitcoin. Like I get that. Like I love Bitcoin. Like I don't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
But to actually like love a treasury company,
Very strange.
it's a bit niche, isn't it?
It makes me think you ever seen the movie Almost Famous? It was that movie about the kid. He was the writer for Rolling Stone that traveled with the bands and all of the groupies. We need like an almost Bitcoin thing that's similar. It's about the groupies that are traveling with these treasury companies or whatever. Because yeah, it's a weird
that happens. I did. I went to a talk where one of these the CEO of a treasury company was being, and there was like a little group of people, and I was like, oh my god, these are, and then he tagged them into the tweet after and thanked them for coming, and I checked every single one of them, and not one of them was following any normal Bitcoiners, and I thought, my god, this is like a little group of people that specifically love this company.
Weird. That is so strange.
Very weird.
Does Michael Saylor have his own little cohort and like their own little van just following him around from conference to conference? Like it's a weird thing right now. It's like
it wouldn't surprise me.
Becoming rock stars within the industry in itself. It's very strange. All right.
Slay your heroes. It makes me feel very, very uncomfortable, because a lot of the people that are out there kind of educators and trying to, you know, they're just kind of fiat people dressing themselves up as wanting to do Bitcoin because it's a social good, but really they're just there to extract and feed their own egos. And we put these people up on pedestals as if they're kind of the messiah because they're big, well-known Bitcoiners. And I actually think that people need to kind of check themselves a little bit, because like slay your heroes. We shouldn't have any in Bitcoin. It's like not wanting to have a Bitcoin figurehead.
Right.
You know, we just shouldn't have it.
That's so true. I wonder too, are any of these groupies kind of falling by the wayside as a lot of these treasury companies have been getting smoked in the last couple of months? It seems like Wall Street hasn't loved the plan thus far. How do you see that playing out right now? Are we going to lose a couple of these treasury companies by the wayside? Because a lot of these stock prices just aren't doing the trick right now. I got to imagine shareholders are not pleased.
No. And they're not pleased, but I think some of them are still kind of telling themselves it's going to be all right. because they need to believe in it. But then saying that, we have had a really terrible October, which isn't normal.
No.
If you look at all the charts, and even in terms of seasonality, and the fact I think we've only had 2 or 3 red Octobers ever, the fact that we've got a red October is really unusual. So I'd actually like to see what happens to these treasury companies in November and December if we do actually go on another leg up. It'll be interesting to see, but as to whether or not they'll recover, I don't know. I mean, it just seems a little bit Ponzi adjacent to me.
It'll be interesting to see where they go either way, because like it has been, like you said, a bit of a red October, and these come, and we haven't even fallen that much. We're only 16 grand off of all-time highs. It's like 10%ish or whatever. What happens if we saw an actual drawback as we had from cycles past, where we go 50, 70% down? What's going to happen to those companies then? And what is the effect that's going to have over the entire Bitcoin ecosystem? It doesn't seem like a really great setup, right?
No, actually, that's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the fact that October has been Rectober, but really it's tiny, isn't it? It really is small. Yeah, and when you look at it in terms like that, and then you look at how far these treasury companies are down, I think you're right. Maybe they don't stand a chance. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it really comes down to like who is the financial steward, and there's a couple. They're not all created equal, right? Like Michael Saylor does not equal the Bitcoin treasury consultant for another company, and there's a lot of good ones out there, but everybody here is playing in very unfounded territory, and I don't think anybody really knows, at least in the short term, how that's going to play out. I think we all feel confident about up and to the right on the long term, but shareholders want to know what's happening this quarter, not the quarter 5 years from now. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So we're running.
But that's also another issue that I have a little bit with treasury companies as well, because they're two competing forces. One, Bitcoin is a long time preference, and these treasury companies are very much short time preference, and we're kind of putting the two together and expecting like crazy gains from the treasury companies, because you're just going a little bit further, well, quite a lot out on the risk curve, and therefore you expect bigger gains. But they're two completely different things. I mean, one is low, one is high, and can the two really mix?
Yeah, and because Bitcoin really has no central authority, right? There's a big difference between a business where it's always like, what have the numbers, or what has the business done for me lately? That's what matters. With Bitcoin, there is nobody to necessarily answer to, like shareholders. So it's just, well, what's Bitcoin going to do in 10 years from now? And we're okay with that slow but consistent growth over time, even if there's a little bit of volatility in the short term along the way. So you're right. There are two very different things that are being smashed together. And I just don't know how that's going to play out. But it'll be an interesting Q4 and see.
It will.
All right, so Susie, we're running a little low on time here, but before we go, I got a couple of quick hits in our lightning round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the beginning of a sentence, and I just want you to finish the sentence for me. It can be in as many or as few words as you want. Sound good?
Oh, no.
Oh, it's good. This is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. All right, so I want you to finish this first sentence to me, Susie. If Satoshi appeared right now, he'd say what?
Stack sats and stay humble.
I think that sounds about right. I think you nailed it. You're a natural at this one. I knew you'd be. Okay, next one. The scariest thing for Bitcoin right now is blank.
Michael Saylor.
Michael Saylor. Why is he the scariest thing for Bitcoin right now? I mean, this is very interesting what we're tapping into. Tell me.
Just because of the hero worship, and because of the because of MicroStrategy. It's the first time that we've ever seen this before. I mean, I do think that MicroStrategy is one of the solid ones, absolutely, but it's still leveraged. The underlying business isn't fantastic. I think it is literally just a vehicle for holding Bitcoin, and people hail this guy. I have concerns with the way that he's changed his narrative over the years. He was very pro self-custody, and it's kind of just become institutionalized in every way, shape and form, even not moving away from the whole self-custody thing to a degree. And I think he's changed his tune on a lot of things, which kind of upsets me a bit, because I think that he kind of co-opted a whole load of Bitcoiner brains back in the early days, kind of took them with him, and has changed people's views on Bitcoin, not necessarily for the better, but just because it's become a fiat instrument. And so I just think that really people need to check themselves.
All right, and we're back. I want to give one more special thanks to Morgen Rochard, Susie Ward, and Rajat Soni for joining our fun holiday panel this morning. If you missed it, you can check it out on YouTube, and we will be broadcasting it on a video though later, so make sure to check it out. In the meantime, let's check out how the markets are looking this morning. Currently, Bitcoin back around that 109, 10K level. Things are looking slightly better, but we'll see how it works out as we head into the weekend. In the meantime, I want to get into some Bitcoin alpha with all of you, the Halloween edition, all right? This is where we dig up the on-chain data, read the runes of resistance, and see what kind of ghosts are haunting the Bitcoin charts this week. Remember, 17 years ago, after Satoshi dropped the white paper, the network is now still alive, the banks are still terrified, and the only thing scarier than fiat inflation is missing the next leg up. So let's open the crypt and see what the data is whispering to us today. So let's bring up our first chart here, okay? So the first chart we're bringing up here is the short-term holder SOPR. I'm gonna call this the calm before the reanimation, okay? So this one measures how short-term Bitcoin holders, basically the newbies and emotional traders, are behaving right now. Now, when this ratio we're seeing is above the 1 level, you can see right here, there's that red line at the bottom. That's the level 1. We have a circle, a yellow circle for it on the right side there. When the ratio is above the 1, the short-term holders are selling at a profit, okay? But when it's below the 1, they are selling at a loss. So think of it as the market's fear and greed meter, except it's math instead of memes, all right? Now here's where things get a little spooky. Over the years, these big spikes that we're seeing and dips have started shrinking. You can kind of see here, they're getting smaller, which means profit takers aren't partying as hard and panic sellers aren't screaming as loud. That, my friends, is called volatility compression, and it usually happens right before Bitcoin wakes up from the dead and goes full Frankenstein on the charts. So each time this pattern tightened, you guessed it, we saw a major move follow shortly thereafter. Right now, we're hovering around neutral, right around the 1 line there, as you can see. That's neither profit nor loss is winning currently. It's kind of the financial equivalent of the quiet moment in a horror movie before something bursts through the door, all right? So yeah, the market's looking pretty calm right now, maybe a little too calm even, and we all know what comes after that in a slasher flick. It's a big jump scare, so we're keeping an eye on that. We're bringing up chart number 2 here, okay? So this next chart is Bitcoin's magic lines, okay? I'm gonna call it the curse of the moving averages, all right? Here's where the technical ghosts live. These are the 128 and the 200 and 365-day moving averages. Basically the holy trinity of trader superstition. And you can see them, we have the kind of yellow-orange line, that's the 365 DMA, the red line's the 200 DMA, and the blue line is the 128 DMA, okay? So right now the price has slipped below that 128 DMA of 114. You can see right there in the blue in the top left. And the 200-day DMA as well, that's at 109K. But it's still holding above the 365 DMA, that's at 101.5K, all right? That line separates healthy pullback from the call and exorcist option, all right? So if Bitcoin bounces off this 365 DMA at the around 101K level, that's historically where the bulls begin to rise from the grave, all right? But if it breaks below the 100K level, things might start to feel a little haunted, at least in the short term. So the bottom line here is these are the levels to watch like silver bullets. If the price claws back above 114K, the bull narrative gets revived faster than a Halloween sequel. So we're looking at that 114K number specifically as we move on. All right, so let's go to our very last chart here. This one is the terminal price chart, or the top that haunts every cycle, okay? So this is Bitcoin's kind of ultimate final boss level we're looking at. It's a model that estimates the upper boundary for Bitcoin's macro cycles, basically the price where euphoria usually peaks and long-term holders start taking profits, okay? Historically, every bull market top has kissed this red line here before collapsing back into the crypt, all right? So right now, that terminal level sits around 270K, and we are nowhere near that right now. So no, this isn't the ghost of the top. This is the part of the movie where the monster is still growing stronger, but in the shadows. Now, until we approach the 270K mark, the long-term structure says there's still plenty of upside left before the next true exorcism of greed. So what does this all mean today, right? Well, right now it looks like Bitcoin's consolidating in what appears to be a tightening coffin, all right? Short-term traders are getting quiet, volatility seems to be fading, and key averages are creaking right below our feet. That combination usually means one thing: something big is brewing in the shadows. We might see some short-term pain, but it will follow with some long-term gain. So right now, we're still in that eerie stillness before the next big breakout, and when Bitcoin decides to move, it won't knock first. So light your candles, keep your keys close, and remember, Satoshi's white paper dropped 17 Halloweens ago today, and the monster he created is still alive and getting stronger. So happy Bitcoin White Paper Day, my friends, my ghoulish hodlers, and we'll see which side the market rises from the crypt next as we head into next week, all right? We're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, more Blockchain Report coming your way. Stay tuned. Wish you could grab cash without selling your Bitcoin? Yeah, same. But hey, that's why Ledden exists. They're the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Over $9 billion worth issued since 2018 with a perfect record protecting client assets. And you might be asking, what makes a Ledden loan different? Well, with custody loans, your collateral stays put. They don't go degen and lend it out for yield. There are no credit checks. It funds in just under 6 hours. There are no monthly payments. You can repay anytime with zero penalties. And for transparency, grown-ups actually want proof of reserves reports every 6 months verified by a top accounting firm. The bottom line is Ledden lets Bitcoin holders unlock liquidity without selling. And you can check it out over at ledden.io/RoxomTV. That's LEDN.io/RoxomTV. All right, gang, it's time for Bullish, Bearish, or BS. This is the part of the show where we recap today's top stories and determine if things are looking good for Bitcoin as we enter into the final 2 months of the year. Can you believe that? It's going by so freaking fast. All right, so our big story today, we had our Halloween white paper Bitcoin special panel today. We had amazing guests. We had Morgen Rochard. We had Susie Ward. We had Rajat Soni. And I was here too. And it was a blast. And we went through so much today and we talked about where Bitcoin has been, where it is currently, and where it is headed. And it was bullish news across the board. Bitcoin is redefining the financial system as we know it in front of our eyes, and it's only been 17 years, and somehow we are still so early, and that was never more apparent than in our discussion with our amazing guest today. So it is a great way to end the month of October. It was not the October that we all had envisioned. In fact, it's been a lot more of a red October, like that movie, and that's okay. We still got 2 months left in the year, and Bitcoin's not going anywhere except up and to the right. But hey, you already knew that. Anyway, it is a bullish way to end what has been a bit of an underwhelming month, but we got 2 more months in the year, so I think things are going to change around pretty quick here. In the meantime, I want to say, as always, thank you to all of you so much for tuning into the Blockchain Report. Remember, we're here every freaking day of the week. We'll be back on Monday, but remember, our Monday time is a little different. Monday, we start at 10 a.m. Pacific, going to 12 p.m. Pacific, as we have the Bitcoin Treasury show ahead of us. So make sure to check that out. That'll be at 8 a.m. on Monday. But through the rest of the week, Tuesday through Friday, we're here at our normal time of 8 a.m. Pacific through 10 a.m. Pacific right here on RoxomTV. So again, thank you all for joining us today. And if you haven't already, do me a little Halloween favor, would you? And just make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to RoxomTV, the Blockchain Report at Hank at RoxomTV. And if you do so, I promise to not curse the ghost of Satoshi to follow you around every time you are getting paid in fiat. So as always, gang, thank you so much for tuning in. It's always a pleasure. Until I see you next week, stay safe, stay spooky, and always make sure to hodl on. Happy Halloween, everybody. See you next week.